the Mark's Motivational Podcast, another Authors Tuesday. So I'm delighted to be joined by another great author on the podcast tonight, Lee Fomes from the UK. So, Lee, it's great to welcome you on the podcast tonight, Lee. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Not at all. You're very, very welcome. How are you? You okay?
Yeah, all good, all good. So we'll probably start off the podcast, if you wouldn't mind telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and how your great good story there of how you became an author back in the day. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
My name's Lee Fomes. I'm 49 now, 50 this year. Oh my God. Um,
Yeah.
I've been playing music ever since I was like 11, 12 years old. I eventually am sort of playing full time in various different concert bands and things all over the country. I didn't get a chance to do my degree in music when I was at sort of after college, because I went straight into playing straight after college. And I remember I was studying for my degree with the Open University, and it came to my third year. It's a 6-year course because you do it part time, and this idea for a character just sort of sprung into my being. I was like, oh my god, this is really really strange. What am I going to do about this? And I looked at my workload. I was like, oh god, I can't do anything until I finish my degree, and that's like another 3 years away. So I just had to jot down some notes here, there, and everywhere, and just force the book closed, and then carry on with my studies. Anyway, I graduated in 2006 with the Open University, and that's when I could throw myself into the writing process. And it took about, oh God, I'd say a good 2-3 years, with the time that I had anyway, a good 2-3 years just to plan everything really.
Mhm.
And then once it was all planned, it took me about a year to write the first book. Um, and I sent it off to loads and loads of different publishers, and emailing was a very sort of new thing at the time. So loads and loads of publishers wanted you to print it off and
Yeah, yeah,
send it off, and it was loads of parcels I was sending here, there, and everywhere, and
yeah,
most of them just got chucked in the bin, and
yeah,
no. All House, which are a company in America, said, "Yeah, we really like this novel, and we'd like to sort of co-publish it with you. So you pay some, and we pay the most of it, and we'll get your book out that way." And so yeah, the L-shaped Village series was born, and book one
mm,
of that series is called Art and the Artisans. It went on to become a bestseller, which actually doesn't
wow,
mean what people think it means. It's not quite as impressive as people think it means, but I can talk about that a bit later on. Um, and yeah, so after book one, I sort of realized that it was going to be a sort of 4-book series really.
mm,
And whilst I was sending book one off to be published, etc., I was writing book two, and then of course book three, and they came out in quick succession. Um, and so yeah, they all came out. The second one became a bestseller as well, but again, that doesn't mean what people think it means. Um, and uh, and after the third one, I got very very ill, and I wasn't able to do much for a while. And I've only really got around to looking at the planning for the last book and trying to get some things down onto paper now. So book four, which is the last in the series, may come out maybe in a couple of years' time. We'll see what sort of time I have on my hands. But I do know that there are people out there who are after the ending to the whole thing, but there's an awful lot of loops that you've got to close. There's lots of different things, and characters that have done this and done that, and you've got to make
mm,
sure that everything's finished and it's closed
yeah,
off. And that takes time, because if you leave one thing open, then people go, "Oh, what happened?"
yeah,
Um, so yeah, and that's how really I got into writing. It is such great fun. The characters, I feel like they're kind of my own, the characters, and I become more and more proud of those characters every day, even though they're completely fictional. So
yeah.
yeah, that's a sort of short bio-ish.
Great. And well done getting a publisher because that can be a tough job. As an author, can be a tough job.
It's really, really tough. Yeah. Um, no one prepares you for the fact that everybody just says either nothing, they just don't say anything, or they'll say, no, it's crap, sorry.
Yeah.
It'll just get thrown in the bin. And that happens a lot. You get a lot of no's. And you just have to be patient and, listen to what some of them say, because they can say, maybe it hasn't happened for this reason. So you change things around. And yeah, perseverance is the key.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's great. Like, congratulations and bestsellers. That's incredible. Well done. I know
Thank you
you're
very much.
you're not trying to highlight it too much, but that's a big success. Well done. Yeah, great stuff. And do you want to maybe talk a little bit about your books that you've written as well? Would be great. The L-shaped village book, was that your first one? Was it, Lee?
Yeah, that's the first one. So that's the name of the series. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. Very good.
yeah. Yeah, and book one in that series is called Art and the Artisans. So the main character is a guy called Arthur. Shortened to Art. And I can't really talk too much about the plot because it's going to give most of it away if I do.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's a sort of science fiction fantasy, heavy on the fantasy. And all I can really say at this stage is that it's a story of a boy who finds his way into a mythical world that can't be real and has sort of very weird magic and some very strange people in it. And he sort of has an inkling about where he is, although he's not entirely sure. He doesn't really work it out right until the end of the first book. But what I can say is that even though it's not about Christmas, it happens around it, and it also answers a lot of the questions as to how the man in red may have been able to do it. And
Yeah.
if you believe everything Einstein says, which most people do,
Mm.
you'll realize that it's actually possible. And I'm hoping that book 4 is going to explain that in a way that people are going to be happy with. And I promise I won't do too much to Einstein's laws of physics.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But it is a sort of fantasy sci-fi for sort of young adults. Although some of the best reviews I've had have been from older adults.
Okay. Yeah.
So and we'll see how it goes from there.
So, Lee, it'd be great if you could show the list the people are watching on YouTube. Your books as well would be great.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Please, yeah,
So
yeah.
this is book 1, Art and the Artisans,
Great.
of the Airship Village series, of course. It's there's some blurb on the back, etc. This is actually one that was signed. I had some over from a book signing that I did. What's really nice about it is that the back cover art, the actual art itself, was done by my sister. She lives in America. She's an artist, and she insisted really on
Yeah.
doing the artwork for us, and she did this huge canvas, and that's just a snapshot of it. That was really nice. And a couple of years later, out came the second one,
Oh,
which
wow. Very
again
good.
was so if you look at the background art there, you can see the sort of similar style, but this time this one has got some of the characters on the front, and they were done by a friend of my brother's called Robbie Fuzzard. My sister Claudia Knights, she did the artwork, and Robbie Fuzzard did the characters. And then this is the third book here. And the art for this one was a little bit different because my sister was sort of fairly busy. So there's a local artist here in Alton called Tony Goff, who's a friend of my father-in-law's. He did the sort of back cover art. And when we were living in Kent at the time, there was a girl called Becky Goosey, and she did the characters for this one. But the A on art and the Aristocat there, so that was done by myself. I can just zoom in on that one. So
Great.
it's sort of
Very
like
good.
got
Yeah. Yeah. Good
Christmas
stuff.
baubles on. So
Yeah.
yeah, so those are the three there, and those are the ones that I've had the most fun with.
That's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, because I was going to comment mentally, Lee, on how good the artwork is. So well done. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
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 yeah.
but
She was.
yeah,
I had to send her the book, of course.
yeah,
So
okay, yeah,
she read the book, and then she I'm quite glad that she painted what she did, because it meant that
yeah,
I'd got across exactly what the L-shaped village was meant to look like. Um, so just a little bit of background there. So the L-shaped village itself, that is one of the key areas of the book, the actual land that they arrive in. It's a very small village.
yeah,
So the whole land itself, the world, is called Armali, and the L-shaped village is just a small village. And what's interesting about that is that the whole world, the Armalian world, is very sort of bright and sunny. It's very lush.
yeah,
There's some desert, there's some tropical areas, but the L-shaped village itself, for about a mile square around the L-shaped village, is thick with snow. And there's a reason that that happens, which you'll find out probably at the start of book two. So yeah, there's this little house that they have to, when they go into the village, they have to put on some, some thick coats, etc., and boots, because when they start walking into the village, they hit the snow and it gets very, very cold, like instantly. But yeah, that so lots of the action happens around there. Most of the action in book one happens in the L-shaped village. Most of the action in the second book happens back home in our own world, and then pretty much all of the action in the third book happens back in the L-shaped village and the other areas that you learn about there as well. Book four, for reasons I can't
mhm,
divulge, happens about 200 years in the history of our world. So it's in the land of George, as it were. So George is the king and his wife is Queen Charlotte. So what happens there? So the sci-fi element there, there's a sort of element of time travel, etc., which is why they're able to go back there,
I
because
love that. That's
various
great.
things have happened,
Yeah,
etc., etc. So yeah, that's yeah, and you get to know the characters along the way. They do sort of ingratiate themselves into your heart. Um, I've got two children, and of course the other children are more important, but you do learn to
yeah,
think about your characters in sort of
yeah,
almost the same way. Um, and so yeah, there we are.
yeah. That sounds great, Lee. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing that. And your books look amazing. I'm gonna make sure you send on all the links so I can put them in the show notes. That's brilliant.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, great, great stuff. And I might just ask as well, Lee, about your music as well. Would you like to talk a little bit about that? Like, because you're a musician in the forces, is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I joined the Royal Corps of Army Music when I was 19. So I went straight from college. So I did my A levels and went straight from there. Did a year's training at the Royal Military School of Music, um, and then joined one of the bands, and I've been there ever since, really. So we play wind band music, so sort of 40, 45 musicians. So you're talking flutes, clarinets, oboes,
brilliant. Yeah,
trumpets, cornets, trombones, which is that's my instrument: trombones, tubas, bass guitars, drum kits, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so I've been doing that for 30 years now, 30 years.
okay, yeah,
And for most of that time, when there's a long bus journey, which in the summertime there's quite a lot of long bus journeys, people get on the bus and they get their pillows and they fall asleep, whereas I get my laptop out and I start tapping away. And it's quite nice, the sway of the traffic and everything. It tends to drown everything out, and it's nice, and I get into a nice headspace there. So a lot of my writing's done on the fly, onto various jobs here and there. With my own music, I do tend to try and write my own music, mainly because I'm a singer, and there's not an awful lot of vocal music out there that you can buy for wind band.
yeah,
And stuff that you can buy is very expensive. So rather than buy all of that music and try and get the establishment to spend the money on it, it's easier if I actually try and write it myself. Um, so my degree in music helped an awful lot with that. Um, and I very quickly found that I had a catalogue of about 7 or 8 vocal pieces of music that we'd play at least 2 or 3 of them on every concert that we did. We recorded most of them as well. There's a CD called Bandstand Favorites that came out a long time ago. There's five different versions of that one, and some of those are on there. And yeah, so I felt very lucky, very blessed that I've been able to play music for 30 years of my life. And at the same time, there's been some time here and there to, study for my degree and to write these books as well. And yeah, I've only got a few years left, and then I'll have to leave the army, and I'm not sure what's going to be next for me. We'll see.
Yeah. But it's very good to have things to fall back on as well, like music and your writing as well.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's fun. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right, so no, thanks a lot for sharing that. That's absolutely brilliant. And can I just ask as well, do you have a kind of a strategy you do with your writing? I know you do it on the fly, but like,
Mm.
when do you ever kind of, some people might write a certain amount of words a day, or have you ever
Mhm.
done that yourself before, Lee, or what way do you do it yourself?
Yeah, so I've thought about this quite a lot because I've been asked this before. Um, and it's a mixture, really. So a lot of it is planned, meticulously planned,
Okay.
and a lot of it happens spontaneously. So let me explain about that. So when it comes to the planning side of things, I know roughly what's going to happen in each book. I've got a very rough draft of each chapter with just little bullet points about who does what when. That's very bare bones. That's very basic. That's the planning side of it. And then, but when you actually sit down to write that chapter, or the first few chapters, that's when the spontaneity comes in, because even though I know what happens and who does it, I don't know how it's going to happen until I sit down and write it. And sometimes it can lead you into the most surprising places,
Yeah.
and I can like find myself suddenly startled on the bus going, oh my god, I can't believe she does that, or he does that. And one of the most interesting examples of that was, I was on a bus. I think we were going to Scotland. I think it was a long old coach journey, and I was going through the planning of book three. So I was writing book three. I think I was writing the second to last chapter of book three. Now, nobody dies in that book. Nobody dies in that book. But when I was writing that chapter, even though I had a bare bones plan, it wasn't until I got about a third of the way through that chapter that I suddenly realized one of these characters is going to have to die in the next book. And it just dawned on me. It's like, oh my God. And without thinking, I just went, oh no, like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
everyone looked around and said, bloody hell, what's wrong with you? I said, no, it's fine, don't worry, don't worry. It was that much of a emotional response, as it were. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's 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 very interesting. And the more that I talk to various people about their writing process, a lot of them say the same thing. Some people are very rigid and they're very, very structured. Some people don't have any structure or plan at all, and some others, like myself, have a bare bones plan, and then things happen on the fly. And yeah, they said the same things as well. They get very attached to their characters. So when something happens, or their character has to do something that they weren't thinking, they can sometimes, it can elicit the same kind of response.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a mixture of rough planning. Sometimes it's like meticulous planning and spontaneity on the fly. It's not straightforward, but it's always fun.
Yeah, no, great. And have you ever experienced writer's block, Lee? And how have you kind of got over that? Is that something that
Oh,
ever happened to you?
yes, it has. Yeah. So thankfully, it didn't happen during the first three books.
Okay, yeah.
Um, it sort of happened. Oh God, let me think. So it's got to have been about 7 years ago. Bearing in mind that book three came out a good 10 years ago,
Okay, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and book four has been in the making since then. But yeah, so when I sat down to plan book four, and I had the bare bones in front of me, and I started writing, then literally it just happened. I was like, right, what's the next sentence? No idea. No idea at all. And I was panicking, thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Okay.
Now, the reason that that happened for me was because I didn't know it yet, but I was about to have a nervous breakdown of the highest order, and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. twice, in fact, once in 2017 and once in 2018. So I can contribute it to that, really. It's taken me a long, long time to get over that. And I think I'll be on meds pretty much for the rest of my life. But to be honest with you, I don't really not want to be on them because the alternative is pretty grim. Um, so yeah, that's the only time that I've got writer's block. Um, and since I've been recovering, it's sort of come back to me again. And but what's interesting though is that when your brain goes through a trauma of that magnitude, because it is a trauma,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
you actually come out the other side of it a slightly different character.
Hmm.
So even though I've got the bare bones of book four written, I'm still not entirely sure that it's going to be of the same quality as the other books. It might be a better quality, it might be of worse. I have no idea. Um, but yeah, but what I do know is that I'm a very different person, and one of the ways that I got over that when I found that I had some time on a train, because one of my postings meant I was going up and down on the train every day, had a lot of time, and whilst I was trying to get over that as well, one of the ways that I would, retreat into myself a bit was just to tap something out on a computer. It was nothing to do with book four. And as it turns out, it's a completely different genre. It's a completely different novel. And I suddenly found myself with a 112,000 word romance novel, which is really surprising because that's not what I watch. I mean, I do watch a fair amount of them, but I'm mainly sci-fi and fantasy. Uh, and so to suddenly find myself with that was quite surprising. It's almost if I had to get that out there first before I could concentrate on book four. So whilst I'm sending that out to various different publishers here, there, and everywhere, I'm now concentrating on the fourth book, and I'm hoping to have that out soon. So yes, it wasn't for the reasons that people think, and I think, touch wood, that I'm on the road to recovery now, and we'll see what happens.
Great stuff. Yeah. I know. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I hope.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
I do find that when I talk about it, it does
yeah.
sort of it acts as a sort of a bit of a therapy session.
Right, yeah,
I can totally understand there are some people who, when they think back to those times and they talk about it, it can sort of trigger them.
yeah,
Um, I'm very lucky in as much as when I think back to them and I talk about them with other people, it does sort of lighten the load a bit. So
yeah,
yeah, it does help actually.
yeah. Okay, great. No, no, thanks very much, Lee. I'm glad things are good for you now. Can I just ask as well, what do you find the best way to market your book as well, Lee? In what ways have you found best ways to market your books?
Yeah, so it's it's quite tricky really because marketing costs money. It's very expensive if you were to hire an advert to put on the train, going up and down to London every day, you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds. It's an awful lot. But of course, in this age, as it were, and as it was sort of beginning back in 2011 when the first book came out, Facebook is a fantastic way. You can actually pay for Facebook ads, and they're not that expensive really. It just puts your sort of Facebook page for the book out to various different people. So yeah, Facebook, Twitter, all of the greats really. It's not really the best way to get your book out there. The best way is to have an advert, but for me, it's the only way that I could afford, and it does, get some results, and we'll see what comes of that. But there it is.
And have you got them in any bookshops? Have you managed to get them in bookshops in your area?
Oh yeah, yeah. So I mean, book one was out in 2011, so 13 years ago now.
Yeah,
And it was less of a digital age, so I was sending like physical flyers out to all of the books in the surrounding area. Um, One of the things that Author House did, they were the publisher for the first book. They still are. They did actually get it out into all of the Waterstone stores, which was quite nice. Um, and the ones that they couldn't get physical books into, they at least had it on the system so people could ask. So yeah, they put it into the system, so it was in Waterstones. Barnes and Noble, in the
yeah,
States as well. It's also over there. Um, and an awful again, sorry about book sort of marketing. You did tell me. Um, I did do an awful lot of physical walking around to bookshops and
Yeah.
saying, I've got this book. Would I be able to do a book signing here? And they said, absolutely. Where is it on the system? They found it. That, oh, brilliant, fantastic. So that sort of first year, 2011, I spent an awful lot of that time going around various Waterstones in the country. I did London, I did Stratford upon Avon, I did here in my hometown, and lots and lots of places over the country. And I sat and I signed books for people who saw it and who thought they wanted to give it a try. So that was a good way of marketing, is to physically do the exercise and to either go into the bookshops or to at least send them a flyer in the post or an email, etc. So yeah, I've been fairly lucky that it has been in the bookshops, which is good.
Right. And how did you kind of let people know about signing the books in the bookshops, Lee? Did you put it out on Facebook, or what way did you do that? For people
Oh yeah,
that might
so
might be able to help people. Thanks very much.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
Facebook, Twitter, there was just the odd thing here and there.
Yeah.
But the good thing about Waterstones is that once you've booked a book signing with them, they
Okay.
will actually tell their customers about it. So they
Oh,
put
very
out
good.
flyers, and they put things in their windows. They had a couple of sandwich boards outside, a couple that I know as well. So they did most of the marketing for the book signings that I did. Um, and what was good about the book signings is that I met lots of other authors who were also doing book signings, and
Right.
I'm in a sort of Facebook friend group with those people. And yeah, so you meet some fantastic people. You read some brilliant stories, and you hope that yours just capture the imagination of the public and hope that they rush out to buy it.
Yeah, great. I'm sure they will. But the looks of them books they look amazing. Really, really good. Well done, Lee.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And have you got them in any libraries in your area as well? Can people get them in libraries?
Well, again, they're on the system, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that the libraries of all of my kids'
Oh, great. Yeah.
schools along the way, they've always taken one in. So yeah, they're in the libraries in this local area.
Great. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how you'd break into, getting your book into libraries. So no, that's something I've not actually looked at yet. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see.
No, great stuff. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Just for people that are listening, they might want to go out and get your book in certain libraries. So that's brilliant. Thanks a lot for explaining that.
No worries.
And can I just ask as well, what was your most biggest success so far in your writing? If you could maybe pinpoint one thing that you're really happy about that worked out so well for you in your writing.
Oh yeah. So there's two things really. At the end of after one of the book signings up in Stratford upon Avon, um, there was a young girl. She was about 8 or 9 years old, and she bought my book, and I signed a copy for her. And then book two came out, and I did a few book signings around the area. And what was nice is that she grabbed her parents by the hand, and she went to the Waterstones, and she said, "Right, where's he doing a book signing? Because I need to get book two." So they managed to get out of her, and she drove out to one of the Waterstones somewhere. I think it was in Stratford again, doing book two, and she sought me out, and she said, "I really want to buy book two. Can you sign one for me?" I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! It's really nice." So she's also bought book three as well. Um, and the other thing which is nice is how I said that book one and book two were bestsellers.
Yeah,
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 so that doesn't mean what people think it means, but it is still quite nice. So
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
what it means is that your book places in the top 100 of any bookstore or website that sells books, like anywhere. So it doesn't have to be the New York Times or anything big like that, just anything really. So when I was going out to do a book signing at Waterstones, they phoned me up the week before and said, we're having a few problems with our suppliers. Could you bring all of the books? So I said, sure. So I got on the phone to Author House, and I said, yeah, I need 200 copies of the book, please. So they sent me 200 copies of the book, and then I got a ping on my computer, um, and it was because Author House publish books, they also sell their books for the most fleeting time, like I think about half an hour. Because of the 200 that I bought, it broke into the top 100 of their sales, and that meant that it was officially classed as a bestseller, which is quite nice.
Yeah,
So
great.
no,
Yeah,
it doesn't mean what people think it means at all. It doesn't mean if it's a bestseller that it's sold fantastically and you're, suddenly a millionaire. It's definitely not the case. I think I've
that'd be
probably
nice.
broken even with
Yeah,
my books. I don't think I've earned anything really out of it, but I do get a line out of it as well. So yeah, we'll see.
yeah, yeah. That's great. No, that's a big achievement. Like, and I know your bestseller is nothing to be sneezed at. So very well done with that.
Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I suppose, and thanks very much for coming on, Lee. It's been great talking to you. And can I just ask you what's next for yourself? Anything you'd like to let the listeners know that you're doing? Obviously, you've got book 4 coming out. When is that going to be on the shelves or on Amazon?
Yeah. So let's have a think. So I've done the planning. I'm starting to do the writing now. I've got another 2 or 3 years left in my current job, which means I'll have some bus time. So the two main things really are going to be in about a year and a half, we'll probably see book 4 out, which will be quite nice. And at the same time, how I mentioned the romance novel. Again, they were 4 characters that just popped into my head. There's a lot of inclusion themes in those as well. So I'm hoping that around the same sort of time, maybe a bit later, there'll be that new novel. It's got a working title at the moment, which I won't mention because it'll probably change. So yeah, what's next for me is going to be hopefully book 4 on the shelves in about a year and a half's time. Maybe a completely different novel, a romance novel, will be out soon, maybe in 2 years' time. And then the transition to me to civilian life and to try and work out what sort of career I'd like to carve out next. So they're those 3 things that I've got to look forward to. But I'm going to try my darndest to get some when book 4 comes out, and I'll see what happens with with the other book as well. But no, on my Facebook pages, on my Twitter, and everything else, I'll get all the news out to people as soon as I can, and hope that they can attend.
Great. No, I wish you all the success going forward, Lee. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and your books look amazing. And I'm going to share them all on the show notes for people to check out.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee Fomes. Everybody, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, Lee.
Thanks ever so much. You're very welcome.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for watching and listening on Spotify. So till next time, take good care of yourself, and all the best, Lee, going forward, everything you do.
Thank you. Cheerio.
Thank you. Boy. Hello, everyone. Mark here. Thank you for watching another episode of my Authors Tuesday podcast. I recently published a book of children's stories called The Adventures of Larry Lamppost and Friends. The book began life as bedtime stories I wrote for my own children. If you'd like to purchase my book, follow the link in the description box below. By buying my book, you are also supporting my podcast series for authors, which is giving a voice to writers in Ireland and across the world.